Now, the US-Venezuela standoff has also drawn Colombia's President Gustavo Petro, a sharp critic of the American strikes on the alleged drug vessels. Gustavo Petro, who has accused Donald Trump of murder over the strikes on the alleged drug boats, was sanctioned by the American Treasury on Friday, along with his wife and son, that bans them from travel to the United States and freezing any American assets that they hold. But Petro remains defiant. In a rally in the capital city of Bogota, Petro has warned that Colombia will not kneel before the United States.
We do not kneel. We will not take a step back. He doesn't even clearly know where Colombia is, who increased coca leaf cultivation in this country, and who has stopped it, who has fought against the Colombian drug cartels in their attempt to seize power.
Further reports suggest that Petro is considering to end the U.S. military and CIA presence in Colombia, a relationship that goes back to the early 1950s. The United States has got 2 naval bases, 3 Air Force bases and 2 Army bases in Colombia. The 2 naval bases are in Cartagena and Tolemeda, which host the joint maritime training operations. The 3 U.S. air bases include the Malambo, that is used for surveillance and reconnaissance aircraft, the Palanquero, a key center for air operations and logistics, and the Apia Air Base, which supports air mobility and intelligence sharing. The 2 Army bases are in Lirandia and Tolemeda, which support the counterinsurgency and drug interdiction operations. Historically, Colombia has been one of the U.S.'s closest and most consistent ally in Latin America. But Trump's military campaign in the region has soured relations, leading to a war of words between the 2 leaders. While Trump has called Petro to be a drug leader and a thug, Petro has hit back, reminding Donald Trump that he's not the king of Colombia. So as the United States steps up its military build-up in the region and threatens a full-blown war, the spat between the 2 leaders could have a pretty profound impact on security in Latin America. All right, now joining us on the broadcast all the way from Pereira in Colombia, we've got Mr. Santiago Lopez. He's an international affairs journalist and also an analyst with more than 15 years of experience reporting global news across Latin America, Europe and other conflict zones. Mr. Lopez, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, this is some high-octane rhetoric that we are hearing, both from Donald Trump and also from Gustavo Petro, who has said that Donald Trump is not the king of Colombia. But what is, of course, a little baffling is the manner in which Donald Trump has sought to try and target Colombia, which happens to be a close ally of the United States traditionally, which has hosted American bases right from the 1950s onwards. What's happening there?
Thank you for having me today, Mohammed. This is a situation that we have to look very carefully, because it also depends on the eye that you look at. Because if we take a look to the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, we have to take into consideration that he is completely opposite to the perception in terms of politics to President Trump. So since from the very beginning of the Trump presidency, there was this disconnection between the 2 governments, between the 2 politicians, between the 2 presidents, because of the different perspective of the politics in the region. Petro is the first leftist president in Colombian history, and Donald Trump is in the second term of his presidency in the U.S. for the second time, and we have to take it into different consideration. With that point clear, we have to take also into consideration that both presidents are using this crisis or these small controversies between the 2 countries to rise popularity domestically, and also to focus in this matter, because in other fields they are not having success or they are not advancing in different points. That means that, for instance, the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, right now is having a lot of issues in terms of domestic politics, and he's trying to make a diversion of the point of view of the Colombian society to focus on this controversy between the U.S. and I think Donald Trump is also doing kind of the same, because he's not making any big advances in the international fields in terms of the war between Israel and Gaza, the war in Ukraine between Russia and Ukraine, and same happened in Colombia. So I think both, as a political,
Right.
very well experienced politicians, they are trying to focus on different fields in order to distract the audience.
Interesting. And also, Mr. Lopez, because you're joining us from Colombia, give us a sense of how the American mobilization, military mobilization in the Caribbean region is being looked upon by the nations, in the adjoining regions there. Now, it is being said that this military build-up is predominantly to target the narco boats, which the Americans say that they are cracking down on, but some indicate this could be a tactic to build pressure inside Venezuela to bring about some regime change. How does Colombia look at the American military mobilization in the region?
Well, if we take into consideration the Colombian government perspective, yes, it is like that. It is, as you said, it is a way to pressure Venezuela in a sort of way, and it's also an excuse just to make pressure over Nicolas Maduro's government and over the cartels in Colombia and Venezuela. That's the perspective of the Colombian government. But also, if you take a look to the history of Colombia and the U.S. relationship, we have been involved in different kind of fields in order to prevent the increase of the drug war in the region. So that's the main founding of the relation between Colombia and the U.S. So for many analysts and experts, it's not strange that the U.S. is doing something like that. But we have to take carefully this situation, because in my personal opinion, what we are having here is the same kind of strategy that Russia did with Ukraine. In a sort of way, Trump is trying to pressure Venezuela in order to pressure President Putin to negotiate a peace agreement in Ukraine. And let's remember that Venezuela is a very close ally of Moscow, of President Putin in the region. So it's the easiest way to make pressure from Washington to Moscow in order to reach a peace agreement in Ukraine. It's a war that has lasted more than 3 years, and now is kind of in a pause. Is not making any advance at all in terms of territory or agreement or conversation between the parts. So in my personal opinion, yes, it is a way of President Trump and Washington to make pressure over Russia and over Venezuela.
Interesting. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Santiago Lopez, for joining us from Colombia and giving us that perspective there.
Thank you.